Rotella is our first guest. We will get to Dr. Rotella in about 90 seconds today on the program. He is an American sports psychologist. I will go and make this statement: the premier American sports psychologist in the globe, in the world. Scratch golfer, a man that still goes long off the tee and still has the touch of a jeweler around the green. We also have Landon Fishburne. He's going to join us in the 1 o'clock hour. He's a historian and an entrepreneur. He will give us some of the history behind the Serpentine Walls on the grounds of Thomas Jefferson's University, UVA, here in Charlottesville. Landon Fishburne is going to join us at about 1:05 on the program. Very excited to connect with you guys through this platform. Scott Aaronworth in Virginia Beach. Good afternoon, my friend. Thank you kindly for joining us. Vanessa Parkhill, hello, and welcome to the program. Vanessa, I believe you're watching in Earlysville. Welcome to the program. The Country Club of Virginia, welcome to the program. Thank you kindly for joining us on today's show. A lot we're going to cover today with Dr. Bob Rotella on the program. J-Dubs, if you could check those channels and my page in particular, that would be appreciated, sir. We can rock and roll in T-minus 30 or 40 seconds today on the program. If you have any questions for Dr. Rotella, please put them in the feed. If you got any comments for Dr. Rotella, please put them in the feed. He's got a new book called Make Your Next Shot Your Best Shot, which we're very excited about. It's sitting in front of me today. Patrick Harrington has got the foreword here. I have a feeling this book is going to be perfect for every and all golfer, from the talented scratch golfers to the weekend golfer that enjoys getting out with the family to the one that occasionally gets on the golf course. Make your next shot your best shot, a read and a buy that you got to have on your shelf. So J-Dubs, we are ready to rock and roll. My friend, my compadre, 10 years of working together, and that's no easy task because I go 1,000 miles an hour. But Judah's the yin to my yang, and certainly family right there with my wife and my son. Inner circle, J-Dubs, I mean that. We're in your hands. We can start the program, Judah, when you're ready, sir. Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. Thank you kindly for joining us on a glorious day to be alive. We are live in Charlottesville, across the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille network. I'm very excited about today's program. We have a gentleman and a scholar, a brand and a resume that undoubtedly speaks for itself. Dr. Bob Rotella will join us in this program in T-minus 30 seconds. He's got a new book, which I have right in front of me, Make Your Next Shot Your Best Shot, a must-read for all golfers alike. We will get to this book, we will get to some stories from the PGA Tour, and we'll get to some stories perhaps of courses and clubs like Shinnecock Hills, like Kings Mill Resort, some of the courses and clubs here in Charlottesville and Central Virginia that Dr. Rotella knows inside and out. Before we get to that, we'll thank some of the partners that make this program possible. First, Ting Fiber Internet is the crazy fast internet that powers the I Love CVille network. We are very grateful for the support of Ting Fiber Internet, the best internet here from what we've researched and experienced ourselves. We thank Skooma Boutique Dispensary, located on the downtown mall. David T. and his team at Skooma Boutique Dispensary, certificates of analyses for everything in the store. And of course, how can we forget the good doctor, Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine. We've worked alongside Dr. Wagner and his team for over a decade at VMV Brands and at I Love CVille. Judah Wickhauer is the North Star of the I Love CVille network, our consistent and level hand. And Judah, I mean that sincerely. If you could, Judah, let's go to the studio camera where we're going to welcome Dr. Bob Rotella to the program with 9 states watching this gentleman on the I Love CVille show. Dr. Rotella, good afternoon, sir.
Well, good afternoon, Jerry. I love Charlottesville, too.
I know you do.
Been here since 1976.
He's got a lot of golf course stories, a lot of tales to tell of folks he's worked alongside. Before we get to all of that, Dr. Rotella, this book right here is a must-buy for anybody. Tell us about Make Your Next Shot Your Best Shot, sir.
Well, basically, it's a book about how to get better at golf. And the title comes from the idea that when you play golf, you have to get really good at wherever you hit it. You have to accept it, go find it, and go get it in the hole. And that's the essence of golf. You know, we talk a lot about staying in the present moment. And that's really what it means. That shot's over. We don't want you thinking about some shot later on in the round. The only shot that matters right now is the one you're going to play next. And you have to do that until you run out of holes. I mean, that's really the essence of playing great golf.
So one of the basketball players, rest in power, that I admire is Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant has embodied the Mamba mentality, where he could have gone 0 for 22 through 3 quarters, but he wanted the ball in his hands at crunch time to hit the game winner, and he did that time in and time again. That mental toughness is something that's needed not only in sports, but in life, in marriage, in business, whatever it may be. How do we get to the point where we start having the mental toughness of Bob Rotella, of Kobe Bryant?
Well, I think it begins by really wanting something really badly. I mean, I think when you have a passion for something, that leads you to start having a vision where you can see it happen long before it happens. And I think the more, like if you want to get a really good short game, it's important that you begin by believing and imagining that you can have a really good short game. And then you put a plan together, and then you have a work ethic where you persist at it, because what happens in golf is it takes a while to get good at every part of the game, and there's a lot of pieces. And you have to be able to delay gratification. You have to be able to sustain your commitment and keep going at it, even though you're going to go through periods when you plateau. You may go through periods where you actually get worse before you see the results show up on a golf course. And I mean, that's a lot of where it starts. And then I think part of it is really taking pride in the fact that nothing that could happen on a golf course could possibly bother you or upset you. I mean, we talk about you're unstoppable if you're unflappable. So really becoming unflappable is a big piece of the puzzle. And you're really putting a puzzle together, and unfortunately the puzzle never is put together perfectly, and you have to go play the game. And I keep talking about the idea that it's a game of mistakes. It's not a game of perfect, and you have to embrace that if you love golf. If you don't love golf, then you spend your whole life trying to change golf into what you want it to be. And there are people who probably wish it were a game of perfect, but it'd be boring as heck if it was. So, I mean, that's a lot of what I spend my life doing.
When did you start playing golf?
Well, I played a little bit as a kid. I played a few times a year, but I played football, baseball, basketball, lacrosse growing up. And, they let us as a caddy play on Monday mornings. So I played a few times, but it was nothing I was in love with. And then when I came to Charlottesville, I coached lacrosse and taught sports psychology at the University of Virginia. And I played tennis for 10 years. And then I started working with a lot of golfers, and they started winning and doing great. And I started playing at the Farmington Country Club. And now I live at Glenmore and play a lot. I really like it. But I would say it took me about 8-9 years in my 30s to get from probably around 90 down to scratch. So I mean, it takes a while. I mean, you got to put some time and energy into it, and you got to persist at it. But it's a great game because it's hard. I mean, if you like hard, you found the right game.
One of my favorite things about sports is as much the sport I'm playing as the competitive juice that I'm feeling. Yeah. I found the older I get, it's the juice that drives me. Seeing what I'm like when my back is against the wall and how I respond to some adversity, even difficult, even perhaps more difficult, how I respond to success. And sometimes responding to the success is more difficult than responding to the adversity. Some of the things you enjoy about sports and some of the things you enjoy about that competitive juice, Dr. Rotella.
Well, first of all, I think when you say about success, I mean, I think you have to be able to be humble with success because it starts all over again the next day. And you have to be able to stay up and confident when you fail, because you're going to fail a lot in this game. I love the fact that you go out and you practice and you learn a skill, and then you go out in the golf course and see if you can trust that skill and actually get yourself to execute it. I think, what I tell people all the time is to get good, you have to have the discipline of an Eagle Scout, and then you have to play like you're a member of the Hells Angels. In other words, you have to free it up a little bit. And if you try too hard, And of course, it's easy to try hard when you really care about something and you put a lot of time and energy into it. So you got to put a lot of time and energy into it, really care about it a lot, then go on the golf course and play like it doesn't matter. And you're unconcerned about what you shoot and just go play each shot until you run out of holes. It's kind of what makes it tough. A lot of people over the years, I've worked a lot with Ernie Els and some with Freddie Couples, and people would say to me, you know, Ernie and Freddie, they don't even look like they're trying. And I was looking at it, yeah, that's because they're not. They said, well, their swing looks so effortless. I said, that's because they are effortless. And your swing looks effortful because you are effortful. So, I mean, that's the trick, is to develop a skill and then get effortless when it's time to play. And it's a heck of a trick. You were mentioning, Shinnecock. I remember years ago working with Ray Floyd, and he won the U.S. Open at Shinnecock, which was a really big deal to him at the time. And the story behind it is, on Tuesday afternoon, the New York Times calls me up and asks me if I'll do a story on how to win the U.S. Open. And I'm like, they got 3 hours. They need it before a deadline of like 9 o'clock. And all I can think of is my brother's an English professor, and he loves the New York Times. And I'm going to do this because I can call my brother and say, yeah, you read the New York Times. I write for the New York Times.
There you go.
And I said, this is going to be beautiful. I can bust him on it for years. And so I write the article, and the whole article is about the person who's going to win the U.S. Open is the person who plays the U.S. Open as if they're playing it the week after the Open, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with their three best buddies from college. And they are just having so much fun because they're getting to play the Sunday U.S. Open pins and rough and setup. And Ray Floyd wins, and he tells me afterwards, he said, I read your article about 12 to 15 times every night, and I spent the whole tournament pretending I was playing with my two boys the week after the tournament. That makes no sense to most people, because they see him as really bearing down, really being intense and serious, and he's like playing this game in his head that no one else can see. And so a lot of golfers are playing a game within a game. It's funny, this weekend, the guy I've spent a lot of time with, Sam Burns, went on tour this week for the second time. And his first tournament on tour, he was still playing on what's now the Korn Ferry Tour. And he had a second place finish, and he got a sponsor's invite into the Honda Classic. And he's playing great for 3 days. And we're on the range on Saturday afternoon after his round. He's hitting balls, and he's just happy as heck. He's in sixth place, his first tournament going into Sunday. And a caddy walks by us and says, hey, Sammy, nice playing. Did you see who you got tomorrow? And he goes, no, who I got? He says, you got Tiger Woods. And everything changed. His face goes, ooh, interesting. So we have a great conversation about mentally preparing to play with Tiger Woods, and everybody's,
What was that conversation like?
Well, so what happens is we start talking about, well, you're pretty invisible. Everyone's there to watch Tiger Woods, and the crowd, as soon as Tiger hits a shot, they're running to get position to watch his next shot. And you haven't hit yet, and you have to decide, am I going to go ahead and hit while they're out running and making noise? Or am I going to wait? Am I going to get upset about it? Sammy, you can't get upset about it. We discussed you better go find them in the breakfast area or on the putting green and just get comfortable being with them because you've never been with them before. So you got to get over all of that and deal with it. Well, so we go up the next morning, and I'm with him on the range. I feel like he's in pretty good shape. First tee, Tiger hits first, and then Sam hits. But as soon as Sam hits, Tiger runs down this hill in front of the tee box, and he's 40 yards down the fairway before Sam even has his club in the bag. And I look up and I see Sam start running to catch up to Tiger. And he catches up to Tiger, and he puts his arm around Tiger and says something, and Tiger breaks up laughing. And Sam goes on and shoots like 4 under par, plays a bogey-free round, and beats Tiger by like 6 shots. And I'm like, well, that's really impressive. So after the round, I go up to Sam and I go, Sam, what in God's name did you say to Tiger that got him laughing on the first fairway? And he looks at me and says, I told him, Tiger, do you believe how many people came out to watch me play today? And I said, that is so
icebreaker.
Good. Yeah, that's so good for a rookie. And so when people ask me, when did you think Sam Burns was going to be good? I go, yep, that was the first really good sign. I mean, obviously he was a really talented young player, and he was college player of the year, so he's very good anyways. But that showed me he really had the confidence to be one of the greats, and I think he'll have a great career. I think he'll go on and become one of the superstars in the game.
You have one of your biggest fans watching you. His name is Dave Henry. He's in Fairfield, Connecticut right now. I think Dave perhaps should be in the classroom. He's an educator. Instead, he's taking his lunch break with you. He says, Dr. Bob, the man, the myth, the legend, what an honor to watch him today. Connecticut Dave Henry. The book is Make Your Next Shot Your Best Shot. Dave Henry's a fantastic golfer in his own right. You got the Golden Horseshoe on the stream as we speak. Some folks at Shinnecock watching you, Dr. Rotella on the program. Again, the Country Club of Virginia. I grew up in Williamsburg, in Kings Mill. One of the classmates of mine was Thomas Strange, the oldest son of Curtis Strange. Curtis hosted a 10th birthday for Tom. The 10th birthday was in Curtis's basement. There's the U.S. Open trophies. Curtis is an aggressive, competitive guy, as we know. Colorful language, Budweisers. Next thing you know, the birthday involves a competition, and we're in line in the driveway taking free throws, the basketball hoop, with Curtis snapping chest passes to us as 10-year-olds are trying to make some free throws. What struck me from that, and I'm going to pass it to you, is the competitive drive, a 10-year-old birthday, and the father is so competitive that he's snapping chest passes as if we were LeBron James or Kobe Bryant catching them. We're 10 years old, talking some smack to us, making free throws or missing free throws. If you missed it, you don't want to get smack talk from a two-time U.S. Open champion. Can you put competitive drive into perspective and how it appeals or how it's a factor of excellence at that level at any sport or any field you pursue?
Yeah, no, that's a great story because I spent a lot of time with Curtis in his prime, and he is about as competitive as they get, and an unbelievably great guy and wonderful golfer, obviously. But I remember after he won the U.S. Open, he flies home and watches the replay with his family, and he comes over to see me the next day in Charlottesville, and he says, Rotella, I'm watching this replay, and these guys on television are talking about how cool, calm, and collected I am. He said, my hands are shaking, my heart's coming out of my chest, I can't get any saliva in my mouth, I'm doing everything I can not to think about what this would mean to my dad if he was alive to see this today. And he said, I'm working so hard to stay in the present moment. If I ever get on television, I'm going to tell people the truth of what we really are feeling like when we're coming down the stretch. But I think to be a great competitor, first of all, you have a drive that's hard for people to understand. I mean, it's a passion that, it's
almost an obsession.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's a very fine line between being highly dedicated and being obsessed. And when when we're dedicated to something that the world thinks is healthy, we say we're dedicated. And when it's something that we think is bad, we say you're obsessed or you've got an addiction. But yeah, I mean, I think most of those guys in their prime, for at least a number of years, they're very single-minded. It's like when they're on that golf course, they create a world within a world where nothing else exists. I used a story in the book about Jordan Spieth. I worked with Justin Thomas a lot, and when Justin finished his first year at the University of Alabama, and he wins the NCAA championship, and his buddy Jordan calls him up and says, you're going to turn pro, aren't you? And Justin says, I don't know, I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do. And Jordan looks at him and says, you got to get out here, these guys aren't that good. Which is the exact opposite of the great slogan on TV the TV uses, or the PGA Tour uses to promote itself, because these guys are good. So it's just a great line. And, Justin came out there and he's doing great. But it's a heck of a game, but the competition is hard for people to comprehend. I mean, basically, before you go to the golf course, you better be well under par every time you tee it up, or you're going to get run over. And, that's what makes the tour so exciting. But I mean, a lot of what I teach is that anybody can think like a pro, at least when you're on the golf course, which means it's like tunnel vision or like a horse with blinders on where nothing exists but where you want the ball to go. And I was fortunate. I had a cousin who was Vince Lombardi's best friend. He was named Sal Somi. He was a great high school coach in Staten Island, New York at Neudorf High School. And he and Lombardi did clinics. And every time he'd come to Vermont to visit my family, I'd be the only person who wanted to hear his coaching stories about him and Lombardi. And at the time, Lombardi was just a high school coach at St. Cecilia's High School. Most people don't know it, but Lombardi coached for 17 years in high school. His only other head job was the Green Bay Packers. But man, he understood attitude. And that's how I first started hearing about attitude. And then I was the quarterback on the high school football team and the captain of the basketball team. And so you got to spend a lot of time in the coach's office, and they were always talking about attitude. And then I took a job working with special needs kids. At the time, they were called mentally retarded children. And man, they had the best attitudes of anybody I'd ever been around. I mean, I would teach swimming to them, and they'd spend all day thinking about the only thing great going on in their life, which is they had a swimming lesson that day. And it was a wonderful ability to put all of your time and energy into all the good things that were going on in your life, instead of thinking of everything that was wrong with you or stuff you wish you had that you didn't have. You know, wish you were taller, wish you were quicker, wish you were smarter, wish you were better looking, you know, whatever. And I mean, I learned a lot from them. And then when I was coaching at the University of Connecticut for 6 years, all the time I went to grad school, I coached basketball at the University High School and lacrosse at the university. And I started studying mainly because I wanted to be a better coach. And I just started learning a lot about attitude. And it doesn't take long before you find out there are practice players and there are gamers. And you got to figure out how to get those practice players to become gamers. And you have to get kids to believe in themselves. And, you know, it turned into a career. I really thought I'd just be coaching everything. And now I just coach attitude and the mind. And I've had a ball. I mean, I can't believe it. And there's a side of me that can't believe it. There's another side that I'm very comfortable with it and totally believe it. But
because you earned it.
Yeah, but when you look back at life, when someone asks me, what do you think you're going to be doing when you're in high school? And I said, well, when I was 15, probably my biggest dream to be the head coach at my high school, which was a Catholic high school 100 yards from where I grew up. You know, at that age, that would have been pretty awesome. And you know, now it's like not my dream anymore. You know, I mean, so I've had a ball, and I get to work with a lot of great athletes and a lot of great golfers, and written a lot of books. And the books are about trying to share with people who don't get to spend individual time with me what we're learning from the best players in the world. And all of the attitude parts, anybody can do. I mean, anybody can be upbeat every day. Everybody can love the game, whether you're playing great or not playing great. And everybody can narrow their mind and their focus and on every shot say, well, I'm going to at least see where I want it to go. I'm not going to be wandering to where I don't want it to go. And everybody can hang in there. I mean, what you call mental toughness, you have to have a lot of that. You have to have a lot of emotional resiliency. You have to be able to be patient with yourself in the game, because it doesn't always go the way you want. I mean, like, I remember a few years ago, Justin Thomas was Player of the Year, and he missed 7 cuts. And it's like, if you can't handle cuts, so like when people ask me about like Morikawa or Wolf, or Hovland, are 3 really good young players. They look really good, and people ask me, are they going to be great? And I go, well, give them 5 years. We'll have to see what happens when they get beaten up a little bit, and they miss a bunch of cuts in a row, and they go through a struggle. I mean, that's when you find out if you can play the tour. It's like coming out of college, they never finished worse than 5th, so they're filled with confidence. And can you maintain it when you're not always finishing in the top 5? I mean, that's the test out there.
We'll open up the show, guys, to comments and questions for Dr. Rotella. Dr. Rotella has a new book, which I have in front of me. It's called Make Your Next Shot Your Best Shot, a must-read for all golfers across the globe. This is coming from Thomas Tanker, who's watching at the Wildwood Green Golf Club in Raleigh, North Carolina, with his foursome. He says, Dr. Rotella, who is the most mentally tough golfer you've ever worked with, and why?
When people ask me that, I always say, well, which week, which year, which month, which time of their career? But, I mean, I'd certainly put Tom Kite, Jim Furyk, Curtis Strange. I mean, I spent a lot of time with Nick Price. I mean, there's been but I mean, I think there's a lot of players who are really, really tough when they have a chance to win. The real test is, can you be tough when you're struggling? Or, when you're in 50th place, can you hang in there and play every hole as if you're in contention to win? And, so I mean, I think to be on tour, you're pretty darn mentally tough. And it just means that you just don't let anything ever bother you or upset you. In other words, you decide before you go there, I'm going to be in a great state of mind. I really love the every shot and every hole, and whatever this crazy game throws at me today, and things become more important. If you start sorry for yourself, or you start getting frustrated, or you start getting angry, all it means is you decided getting angry was more important than doing what you needed to do. If you're feeling sorry for yourself, you decide that feeling sorry for yourself was more important than doing what you need to do. They're all distractions in my world. I don't look at them as terrible or awful, but you've just given up your chance to see how good you could play today. And, you know.
More questions coming in for you, Dr. Rotella. This guy's a popular man. So we
Welcome to Tuesday Tips. Today's tips are for small businesses. It's a way for small businesses to save for retirement. And there's actually 5 ways. 2 are traditional. There's the traditional IRA and the traditional Roth. The other 3 is called a SEP plan, a simple plan, and a 401k plan. And SEP stands for Simple Employer Plan, and Simple stands for Savings Incentive Matched Plan for Employees. Now, the beauty about this is that you can actually claim a credit of $5,000 or more to start these plans. So think about it. I mean, the important thing is there's some certain rules and regulations how you can claim these $5,000. So it's always good to speak to your financial advisor or your tax person to find out whether or not you can have a claim on the startup costs for these plans. But think about it. You can save taxes on your corporation by starting a retirement plan. You will obviously grow these funds that you're putting away for retirement tax-free. And 3, if you can claim a credit on starting these particular plans, that's even better. So these are, again, great ways for small companies to begin thinking about their future and saving for retirement. Please like and share us, and don't forget to catch us live every Thursday at 10:15 in Today Mañana. Until then, good fortunes.
of the 10.7 million that made survived the Middle Passage. Just to give an idea of that, the institution was occurring all over the world. It was a horrible thing, and in the United States, there was a new form of government that was saying, we can have a better form of society. They were the early pioneers of this. I can fault them and say, obviously, what they were doing was wrong at the time, but they were also in this reality that was something that we're not living in today. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So,
Bellamy Brown, hit me up before you leave town.
I love Bellamy. I went to school with him. Yeah,
I know you did.
Yeah.
Bellamy Brown's a friend of the show.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
Bellamy Brown
He's
is
great.
a great guy.
Yeah,
a great
yeah.
guy. You're a smart dude, man.
I don't know. Thank you.
You're a smart dude. Let's close with this. This is a comment that's come in for you.
Sure.
I think this is Southwestern Virginia. Where can we get more information on the history of these walls? What are some of the resources you utilize?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a blog. Everyone has a blog these days, but this is my history nerdy research blog. It's called thethoughtZoo.com/serpentine. I've actually done for the past year. It's been a work in progress, and I've written it and given it to scholars to look at, to pick apart, because you got to do that. They have to point out the flaws in it too. But they've given it so much input. I'm very appreciative of this. But you can go to thethoughtZoo.com/serpentine, and I have outlined the majority of the walls on there that I've found, the brick remnants you can find on there, and it has a works cited of all the old journals. And by the way, the sources I'm using are basically the historic journals of people that were gardeners and horticulturalists at the time, and how significantly intertwined it was within their lives. Like, these are books that they were reading, these are books that they were giving to other people. So those are the resources. There's a whole works cited with all of these resources in it that you can please explore it more. All these things are really important. So
I think they should. So Nashville now.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience in Nashville.
Nashville's a booming city. It's it's a different city from when I moved there 8 years ago, it's a great place. Musically, I went to school at University of Virginia, and I was playing music here a lot. I love music, and that's something I love to do. And I also have these other passions I like to do. But I went to Nashville because it is the place where it's all the best of the best are there, and the industry itself is at such a high functioning caliber that it's a constant learning experience when you're there, and it's been great. I've been fortunate enough to play on a lot of bucket list stages, so it's been fun. It's a great city. I love it.
What's this area mean to you?
Charlottesville, it's my hometown. I grew up here. A lot of the things that have gone on have been really hard for me to see in Charlottesville.
That's my follow-up question.
Oh, okay.
That was what I was going to ask you. I mean, we're still searching for an identity. I know you're passionate about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up here. My dad grew up here. My grandfather. I mean, I love history. I just was on a research project in New Orleans. I have family that came to Philadelphia, and we're translating their letters in Yiddish from overseas. They've been sitting there for 250 years, and it's like leading us through. I went to New Orleans, where they ended up going to Louisiana, and they came up here to Charlottesville. There's Lyons Avenue. That's my ancestor, Lyons. So we definitely have. Charlottesville is like a culmination of a lot of these stories for me, a lot of my family history, and I have a lot of great friends here. I love it. I love the area. It's beautiful. I mean, if you haven't lived in Charlottesville for a while and you go drive over Afton Mountain, you're like, oh my gosh, like the contrast of not seeing that for a long time, you realize how magnificent that actually is. So it's, my family's from here, my parents still live here, and I have a lot of history in Charlottesville that I love dearly. I have been saddened to see a lot of the division that's going on in town. It's really upsetting for me to see that. And obviously the 2017 scenario here was horrible to watch, and so. But it's difficult because I see that I'm one of these people that likes to listen to all information, likes to explore every perspective, in my opinion, you have to do that to come to these difficult answers to difficult problems. And the thing that's troubling for me to watch in Charlottesville is that people aren't willing to do that. Like, your show's great, and I told this with you when you were after watching an interview, you're having these discussions with people. You're like you have to do that to be able to bring people's voices out, even if you don't agree with them, like that's important to do. And I'm concerned sometimes when I see like how polarized people are here in Charlottesville, where they don't want to listen to the other side. They don't want to listen to what's going on with I have friends on either side of the coin, and it's like I can listen to them and I can listen to them, and I can still love them for whatever while I see, if you don't consider everybody's viewpoint, I don't know how these solutions can come forth. And so that's a really big.
Amen. I think it's the negative ramifications, unfortunately, of social media.
Yeah, it is. And that's funny that there was an outage yesterday and everybody kind of like
went bananas
because it's like that's how people are getting information today. And it really is polarizing because everybody's seeing what they want to see. They're in their little echo chambers, and people. There are domestic actors using that to their advantage, and there's foreign. I've majored in foreign affairs of the Middle East, and that's how. There's a lot of foreign actors using that. They want to stoke divisions too. So it's like we got to be careful. We got to take a breath before everybody's like at each other's throats, because it's people. I'm getting tripped on these words, but the idea we always hear the saying, "Together we stand, divided we fall." That is we all grew up with understanding that. Other people know that that's a thing too. Like divided we fall can be a strategic plan for people, and they want to encourage that as much as they possibly can. So I just, there's so many people. Everybody's opinion is important, I think, and I think that you can learn from anybody's opinion, and you have to listen to them. But I don't know. It's harder and harder these days to get words and perspectives out there without people attacking you for it, And I don't know what we're going to do with that.
Well said.
So,
Landon Fishburne, guys.
The one thing I will say about the wall, the UVA sort of point about the view that the walls at UVA were to hide the slaves.
Yeah.
Is the reason I got really, you asked, one of the reasons I got really interested in this, I read the report. There's an official UVA president report on slavery at the University of Virginia, and I thought it was really interesting, and it brings a lot of issues to the table about slavery at the university. Important document. But when I got to the thing about the walls, this is the document. This is what it says. Even though the high walls of the gardens were designed to limit the ability of the slave people to see beyond them, and essentially isolate the enslaved from contact with anyone outside the walls, they would not function that way in reality. The two things about that: one, I could never find a citation for that, right? And there's people have written about it, and there's been a lot of supposition, correlation equals causation, sort of arguments about that. But there actually isn't a document that says that. Or does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that they were designed, but they didn't function that way in reality. And I would just ask, if they didn't function that way in reality, maybe that wasn't the intent. Does that make sense?
That made perfect sense. Landon Fishburne, guys, a historian, an entrepreneur, a musician.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in 2021 times, and any times, we call you a Renaissance man.
I don't know about all that, but I appreciate the nod.
An evangelist, guys, undoubtedly of the Charlottesville area. We're lucky to have you in Charlottesville. Nashville's lucky to have you. I look forward to connecting with you again when you're back in town.
Yeah, thank you.
Please send me a DM.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to come back on the show.
I appreciate it.
We are happy to host.
I appreciate that. It means so much. And I will say that I don't know if I said thethoughtZoo.com/serpentine.
Yeah.
Is where you can find out more about that.
Say it again for those.
If you want to read about all this research, it is thethoughtZoo.com/serpentine. And it's all compiled there for anybody who's interested. But thank you so much for having me on here. I appreciate the time. So.
It was our pleasure. This is the I Love Seville show, guys. Dr. Bob Rotella, Landon Fishburne, thank you both kindly for joining us. Judah Wickhauer runs the audio and visual for the program today on the I Love Seville network. We're very much enjoyed connecting with you guys through this platform featuring the best of Charlottesville and Central Virginia. We are back tomorrow with Lee Elberson, and Lee Elberson is the Chief Executive Officer of Claiborne Education. We'll take a look at schools during COVID in 2021 times with Lee Elberson. You guys have a good afternoon. Take care.
Thanks, man.
Good job. We'll get a quick photo here.